Welcome back. In the previous video, you learned how to shade a sphere step by step, and today I will show you how to shade a cube. This is part 2 of a 4-part video series on how to shade basic shapes. My students are asking me all the time, how do I shade my kawaii art? This question has come up so often that I have decided to record this video series so that I can always point you to it and you have the power of the shading. The thing is, everything in the world around us and everything we draw is made up of basic shapes. So any complex form can be broken down into a sphere, a cube, a cylinder, a pyramid, and then there are the composite shapes. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this series. If you're new here, a warm welcome. My name is Tatiana Dennis, and on this channel I share step-by-step tutorials on how to draw kawaii and then how to monetize what you create using print-on-demand services. I love to share my best tips and tricks for drawing digitally and drawing by hand. So if this is interesting to you, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. I also have a free mini course which you can grab right here. Today's demo will be done in a basic pencil. I've got a 2B pencil here, and in Procreate, so I've got an Apple pencil. And a note before we begin is that we are going to be drawing for understanding, not for perfect rendering, because that would take way too long and would get you overwhelmed with all of the technical details. What I'm giving you here is what you would need to know in order to shade kawaii art effectively without getting stuck in details. The actual information is really simple. So that's my purpose, that's my vision for this video series. And now we're ready to draw. If you made it through sphere shading in our previous video, this is going to be a piece of cake. I've got a box of pokey sticks to help us out. It's kind of like a box, but in reality, shading a cube is so much easier than shading a sphere. So I'm using the same paper, a cartridge paper drawing pad, just a regular drawing pad. And I'm using a 2B pencil, a Faber-Castell 2B pencil, 2 types of erasers, a plastic eraser for precision erasing, and then I have this stretchable kneaded eraser, which is great for lifting out any extra charcoal or getting into like some really specific areas. As you can see, you can really shape it. So let's go. We'll start by drawing a regular, just like a sort of a square. Let's draw a square. Doesn't have to be perfect, just so that we can make it look like a cube, more or less. And then we're gonna make some lines coming out from either corner. So keep them under the same angle, more or less, like this. And this is how you draw a 3D cube. My 7-year-old just discovered how to draw things in perspective like this. You know, I showed him, and now he's going around the house and going, "Mommy, I drew a table in perspective. Mommy, I drew a chessboard in perspective." So he's really fascinated by that. Okay, so we'll call this a 3-dimensional cube. And we'll say that the light is coming from this side. So the light is coming from here, and even the pokey is demonstrating this to us really well. So let's see. This is sort of the perspective that we drew, even though it doesn't look like it because the pokey box is really long. But you can clearly see that the top plane is really light, and then this one is darker. And in our case, I have a studio light right here so that the table is equally lit, but in reality there wouldn't be any light right here, so this side would be really dark. So that's the darkest. So when you're shading a cube, all you've got to remember is each side has different darkness. The top one, in this case, like we're assuming the light is coming from here, this is going to be the lightest, slightly darker, darkest, right? Because it's the furthest from the light. And then there's going to be a shadow right here. Shadow is your best friend, so we'll put that in a bit. But let's just start by giving our entire cube some kind of a mid-tone, you know, some kind of a tone so that it's not white, just like we did in the how to draw a sphere video before. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Okay, now we're gonna take a shortcut by smoothing out all of the little imperfections with a tissue. And this is like our starting point, because nothing is really white. Even if the box is white, it's still receiving some light, some shadow. So we're gonna start with this. And if you got some boo-boos, you can just rub them out with your eraser. That's why we have an eraser. It's not a problem. Okay, now we said that this side is going to be slightly darker, so let's put that in. And then finally, the side that faces away from the light will be the darkest. Let's do it. And let's invite in our best friend, the cast shadow. And you can make it really dark. Like the cast shadow, you can make it really, really dark. And that will make your shape really anchored on the ground. And it'll give it some contrast. It'll really show that there is, you know, shading and gradations. So right here where the shape touches the floor, the base is going to be the darkest. So you can have your shadow repeat the shape of the cube, or you can have it just sort of disappear off, you know, fade away. That's another way to do the shadow. So in the sphere, we did like a hard shadow. Here we can do like a disappearing shadow, like it just is fading off, which is fine as well. It depends on the shape. Like with a sphere, it's good to draw like that nice ovally shape. It accentuates the sphere. With a cube, the shape will be like this pointy triangle, which is like pointing away from your subject, right? This is your subject. It's going to be taking the eye off the page. So we don't really want to do that, you know? We kind of want to stay right here. So that's why, you know, another way you can do like this disappearing shadow, but it still has the purpose of anchoring your drawing right there on the paper. So you can easily, you know, turn this into a little character. I don't know, do some eyes, some mouth, some little hands and cheeks, you know, so you can see how easily this can turn into a kawaii character. Now, if you're asking, what about the reflected light that we saw in the sphere tutorial? You know, 100 cool points for you if you notice that. I didn't put in any reflected light here. So in the sphere, we put some lighter areas around the edge, but here I kept the whole plane the same color, the same tone rather. So yes, you can make this slightly lighter, you know, by taking out a bit of lead, or you can make this a little bit darker and have it gradate. Now, in my style, like in my understanding and my taste, I like to keep my visual statements really, really explicit and strong. So I don't want to create any confusion. Reflected light works really well on rounded shapes like balls and spheres and cylinders, which we'll look at in the next video. But in rectangular, like in planes, I like to keep the entire plane the same tone, because that creates a stronger three-dimensional form. Something that you do have to keep an eye out, and this is a common mistake when shading cubes, is making, for example, too big of a tone jump between the different planes. Now imagine this, I'm just going to do this wrong. Don't do this. Do not do this. Imagine this was really dark. this doesn't look so believable anymore, does it? Your eye can tell that either this side of the box is painted brown or something and it's really dark, or there is a mistaken shading. If we aren't assuming that the entire cube is the same color, then the shading should be matching, shouldn't be jumping too much. So there's light here, there's slightly darker here, and there's more dark here, but not too dark. And this is not a formula. It really depends on your subject. This is where observation comes in. But you can look at it and you can say to yourself, this is looking too dark. I've got to fix it, right? So you can just lift some of the lead out and bring it back to the tone that looks more realistic. Now, next we'll look at how to do this digitally, and you'll see once again, it's so much easier, and it's just easy to do it in Procreate. Okay, this is looking better now. Let's jump into Procreate. Here we are in Procreate, and I'll put in my drawing gloves so that I don't hit any gestures, that I don't want to hit. It just helps me relax. Procreate is already pretty good at filtering out your palm, but I still do manage to create some unwanted undos and gestures. So this is just something that's really helpful. And for drawing the cube here, in the previous video, we did a sphere in Procreate. Today, we're going to do a cube, and we're going to take a slightly different approach here. So we're still going to go to the palette, grab, a gray color. If you don't know what palette I'm talking about, I mentioned that in the video about how to draw a sphere, how to shade a sphere. So I'm gonna grab a pencil and first just gonna sketch out the cube. The same way that we did it on paper, I'm gonna sketch it out here in Procreate. Okay, that's a pretty wonky cube. I'm gonna try to fix it here. So this is the beauty of digital art, right? So all I did is select it, turn it a little bit, and something that I really love using is a feature called Liquify in Procreate. So under the adjustments menu, it's at the bottom called Liquify, and it's literally like a brush that you can liquefy your drawing with. So to me, this is a lot like shaping with clay, and I use it a lot, especially in the sketching phase, to like push and pull and mold my drawing until it looks correct. It does sort of distort your lines a little bit, so I wouldn't recommend doing that on a final piece, but in the sketch time, it's absolutely perfect, especially for kawaii. Because imagine if you're drawing like a head and you want to experiment with different, shapes. Look how you can play around with it. Or you can like pull out the cheeks here. You can like try different shapes. It's really, really cool. So, okay. So now we've got a basic cube drawn, and we're gonna drop some colors into it, but I'm not gonna do it on my sketch layer. I'm gonna do it on another layer, and I'm gonna keep the sketch right there on top. So I'm gonna go to my monochrome palette, which is something I created. It's black, white, and then the different tones in between. And I'm gonna grab this lighter tone, and I'm just gonna color in, fill in, let's say, the top side. And for filling up the colors, I'm going to use the monoline brush, which is a free brush that comes with Procreate. If you like, you can let Procreate draw straight lines for you. So if you draw a line and hold the pencil, it'll turn straight. And if you put your finger down, it'll be like perfectly horizontal. It's very handy. Let's do that here as well. Erase the extras. Nice. And we'll fill it with color by dragging and dropping the color into it. So that's our top plane, right? Now let's take another layer and do the side panel. So if you remember, we said that the side will be a little bit darker. So all we're gonna do is take a darker gray. And another tip, after you did the quick shape in Procreate, you can still edit the shape. So it says edit shape, and look, I can move the line up and down, and I can still lock it by holding a finger, so it's perfectly horizontal, so this is really good. Okay, beautiful. And I'll do that here as well. Okay, so we've got the second panel, and let's do the third on its own layer. Get an even darker color still and fill it up. I know this looks super wonky, but I'm just gonna take another shortcut and put it below my other layers so that I don't have to spend time drawing it out. Now I can hide my sketch and fix things up. Now this is a decent looking cube, but we can make it better and stronger by fixing up the shades of the panels. If you remember, we did that in the hand drawing as well. So this panel looks way too dark to actually read, like a realistic shading. So I'm going to select the layer of this panel, and I'm going to go to the adjustments and pick hue, saturation, and brightness. And I can just I can just drag this up or down to get it, where it looks more believable and more realistic. And I might adjust this one as well to be a little bit lighter, because it looks a bit dark compared to how light this is. So adjustments, hue, saturation, brightness, and just brighten it up a bit. This looks way better. So now let's add our best friend, the cast shadow, and we'll be done. For the shadow, I might use a soft brush. So all it is just, it's not a hard line, it's a soft line. Great for shading as well. Let's see if this works. Okay, I don't think this works. So instead, I might just do a hard shadow here. And let's grab a dark color and put it in. It wouldn't be my first choice compositionally to create a pointy triangle right next to my shape, especially in Kawaii. But here the purpose of this tutorial is to show you the shading, right? The shading foundations, and having that cast shadow really dark helps anchor your subject, and it just makes everything pop. So that's how you would shade a cube, like a pokey stick or something, in Procreate. Shading a cube is not so hard, is it? And now you know how to shade a cube step by step using a pencil and using Procreate. You can apply the skills to any drawing that you create, any medium in fact, whether you're using colored pencils, whether you're using paints, whether you're doing digital art. The principles are exactly the same. Knowing how to shade basic shapes makes everything else in shading easier. The reason it works for any medium is because this information that you are getting right now helps you understand the why. Why does the highlight go here? Why does the shadow go here? And then you can choose how to express it. Do you do a soft gradated look like in realistic art, or do you do a hard edge like the anime, the cell shading style? It's up to you. That now it's a question of your taste, but you've got the skills. Keep on practicing shading your cubes, shading your spheres, until the next video, in which we will look at how to shade a cylinder step by step. If you're at the Kawaii Drawing Club, share your drawings in the community so that I can give you feedback, and you can get feedback from the community as well, and you keep on improving. And if you're not at the Kawaii Drawing Club, then I invite you to check it out. The link is in the description below. At the club, we have an amazing, supportive, welcoming community of beautiful kawaii artists. We learn how to draw kawaii. Each month we have a full video, like in-depth training. We also do a live Q&A. We work on the mindset with a tutorial and guest coaches, live coaching. We talk about monetizing, how to monetize your art using print-on-demand services. And we have a drawing date where we get to hang out together, have fun, learn each other's process. It's a way to skyrocket your skill and like literally propel your creative practice forward. So check it out. The link is in the description below. Keep drawing, keep creating, keep sharing, and I'll see you in the next video.